let's get stuck into it first of all. Talking garbage now, and there are a few issues that get us more riled up than our bin collection. But a new plan to add an extra bin to our weekly routine is creating a big old stink.
FOGO stands for Food Organics, Garden Organics. Basically food scraps and stuff from your garden. As it stands in New South Wales, we're chucking too much of that stuff into landfill. And that's nearly full. About 45% of waste in rubbish bins is food waste, with about 1.2 million tonnes of it taken to landfill each year.
Organics going to landfill is really problematic because it creates methane, and we know that methane is 28 times more warming than carbon for the environment, so we need to take it out of landfill.
So to address this, the state government is proposing legislation that from July 2030 would mandate every council to have a weekly FOGO compost bin collection for both households and businesses. With New South Wales Environment Minister Penny Sharp stressing that picking up FOGO bins on a weekly basis would help with the smell issues.
Think of the smell. You haven't thought of the smell.
Locals are just now getting a whiff of it.
Would you be excited about getting a new bin just for FOGO?
Yeah, it will be better that way.
Look, if they take it every week, I don't think there will be any smell. But if it's longer than that, chaos, man.
While countries like South Korea and Sweden recycle about 98% of their household waste, converting it to energy, Australia isn't so resourceful. Nationally, there's a goal for all metro areas to have FOGO bins by 2030. About a quarter of Australia's councils have already rolled them out, but teething problems include things like cross-contamination with plastics and a lack of public engagement with FOGO. But experts say the tide is slowly turning.
It's not that Australians are getting worse at recycling at all. Australians are doing a great job and are really keen to embrace this. We just are not seeing enough intervention or support by government at all levels.
It's hoped New South Wales' new FOGO system could divert almost 950,000 tonnes of waste each year.
We're actually trying to make a product, not just put it in a hole in the ground as residual material. So by separating it at source, we can make quality compost product that can be safely applied to land, which can improve the quality of our soils. So it's actually a no-brainer and something that we must do.
Well, Frank Carbone is the Mayor of Sydney's Fairfield City Council, and he took to social media this morning to vent about the FOGO bins. Frank, why are FOGOs a no-go for you?
Well, the big concern is that we're all for a green bin or a FOGO bin, which is food scraps and green waste, but the New South Wales government is proposing to make that a weekly service, which will mean that the red bin, which is the waste bin, will become a fortnightly service. And the concern is that if you do that, large families here in Western Sydney who rely on the red bin to dispose a lot of their waste will end up contaminating the FOGO bin.
Frankie, are you being a bit sort of patronising about your own community, suggesting that they can't tie up the nappy bags properly or figure out how to separate the rubbish?
Not at all. I mean, the FOGO, the food scraps that go in the FOGO bin actually get tied up in a bag as well. But the big point here is that 15% of what goes into the FOGO, into a red bin today or into the FOGO bin is food scraps. And that means if we go to a weekly service for the FOGO bin, we'll be picking up 15% of food scraps and 85% of air. And that means quite simply that residents will have to pay more for their service, because the concern is that given that the waste will have to wait for 2 weeks, our red bin will have to overflow, will be overflowing, and it will cost a lot more for our residents.
Frank, I don't like to brag, but my local council picks up 3 different types of bins on a weekly basis. Can't you do that as well as the mayor of your council? Can't you make it weekly?
Well, you must live in the inner city. I don't think if you understand, out here in the western suburbs, under the state government, we've had 1 million people come into this country, and that means that houses are getting smaller, backyards are getting smaller, and at the moment, less garages are getting built. So that means that we can't possibly pick up 3 bins when the houses are getting smaller. Our garbage truck drivers simply can't pick them up when there's more cars parked on the road.
But a huge portion of the waste that people are throwing out is this organic waste. So surely if that's in a separate bin that's being collected weekly, there is going to be less bin in the rubbish in the general waste bin. And also the organic waste, I think the issue is that if you leave it out there for 2 weeks, there's a greater chance of the smell, the maggots, all of that kind of stuff. So you have to kind of move that waste through a lot quicker than the stuff that's in the general bin.
Yeah, so firstly, the general bin, of course, you You get nappies in there, you get all other things that will smell if you leave the big red bin out on a fortnightly. But again, the big problem is that if you pick up your green bin or your FOGO bin as it's known weekly, through our studies it's only found that the food component is only 15%. So that means I'm picking up a green bin weekly with 15% capacity in it, and that 85% is air, and that means I need more truck drivers, and that means ultimately that the red bin will be overflowing because you need to pick up that red bin fortnightly. So at the moment the red bin makes up about 60% of the total volume. If you picked it up every 2 weeks, you got 120%. So your red bin is overflowing if you let it for 2 weeks, and then you're picking up a green bin that's only 15% full. How does that make sense?
Frank, thanks very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
I'm so desperate to get one of these bins in my area, and because I throw out a lot of food waste. That's the majority of the stuff. I've got a toddler; she doesn't eat all of everything that I prepare for her. So I thought I'm going to get a bin at home in my apartment because I need to do something for the environment. I've never felt better about myself over the course of the 4 weeks that I was filling that thing up, and then I was like, where am I going to put this? And you can actually go online and find people who will take your waste, but then you look at them and they're like, don't want eggshells, don't want tea bags, don't want this. So I was like, I've got this bin that nobody wants. I'll drive it over to my best mate's place who's got a FOGO. So I put it in the back of the car. A whole thing full of fermented organic waste fell over in the back of my car as I turned a corner. And then all of a sudden, my little bit for the environment ended abruptly.
You know, and then your car needs to go and recycle.
Exactly. It still stinks. It still stinks. Somebody give me a FOGO. I'm desperate.
All right, in other news tonight.